Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Brad. We're going to get into everything to do with the modern market in just a little bit. But before we get there, just a reminder, friends, that unfortunately, we cannot say that this is financial advice because we do not know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your judgment, not just during the course of this show, but maybe just in general. I think that would be a wise move. Brad, with that out of the way, it is Monday. It is the 12th of August. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Why were you awake so early this morning, messaging me at an absurd hour for you?
Hey, buddy. Good morning. Things are great, and I appreciate you. So you haven't called me out on it. I'm actually wearing just like a full-on fucking poncho right now. We're short of time, and there's a lot of travel coming up. So I'm literally just like fucking up with a bunch of stuff to see how I like it. I'm gonna be in Norway, and I'm gonna need to like camp a little bit. So I'm playing with that. Things are good. Yeah, I was up early just because sleep does that sometimes.
Mhm.
Woke up and could not think about things, so started just as you do, get on crypto, hang out, see what's going on. Nothing
Straight to the
seemed too
Discord.
crazy. Yeah, nothing seemed crazy. How about you?
Good stuff. What have I been doing? I have been thinking about, I'm doing a little travel as well at the moment. So I'm going to be on the move for a little bit. We've been talking about Singapore as
Yeah,
well.
Singapore VCon's going on now. I'm seeing tweets come out about that pretty rapidly.
Yeah. If anyone is listening in and is going to be in Singapore, please let me know
Token
because
2049.
Token 2049. Well, there's three of them, isn't it? There's Token 2049 that
Yeah,
week. There is
Breakpoint.
Breakpoint that week, and there is Balaji's Network State Conference all that week
I didn't know
with
about that.
the F1 race at the weekend to top it all off. So if anyone's going to be around, do let me know. Would love to hang out and meet. One of my favorite things to do, catch up with listeners of the show wherever we go around the world. Right. That's a little bit of intro stuff. Brad, we've got a lot more to talk about today. But before we do that, let's hit the headlines, get everyone up to speed with everything that they need to know from the headlines as well as the price action. We're going to go to price action first. Going to share my screen for the people who are watching in. And then we're going to hit the headlines from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. So starting with Bitcoin, we are down just a couple of percent, dipped underneath 60K again. ETH is actually flat, which was surprising. It was a bit further down when I was writing this earlier. It's over 2.6K. And Solana down 4%, just under $150. That's the majors. In terms of the headlines, yep, we've got a bit of a pullback on all of the majors. Memes were down quite a lot, relatively speaking, as well. Number two, BitGo announces the transfer of control of WBTC product to a joint venture with BitGo Global. So the custody will be split across multiple jurisdictions. Obviously, Wrap Bitcoin is quite a significant product. And so definitely thought that was worth just explaining what is going on there. We've got an article to explain that in just a little bit. And then finally, bankrupt exchange Celsius sues Tether for $2.4 billion of Bitcoin. We'll dive into why they are going after Tether for that in just a little bit too. Those are the main headlines. Kind of feels quiet on the price action front compared to before, but definitely two big high value headlines with the types of assets involved. A couple of notable sales: Rare Pepe Nakamoto card selling for 38 ETH. I always think that's a pretty cool card. And Pudgy Penguin Ice Crown selling for 25 ETH. CryptoPunk eye patch selling for 25.4. CryptoPunk floors kind of hovering around the 22 ETH region at the moment. So not doing too bad there or thereabouts. In terms of the NFT side of things, let's go over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, to check out what's going on there. Bored Apes are around 9.8, edging up compared to everything else. Really good strength in the Bored Ape ecosystem, up 3%. Milady's down just a touch to 3.8. Mutants at 1.6. Campai Pandas bouncing the big bounce back after the what was it? The RTR Restore the Republic token debacle at the end of last week, up 17%, back to about 0.5. Pudgy Penguins
Gun to
8.2.
your head, are you a buyer?
Pardon?
Gun to your head, are you a buyer? Pandas.
No.
Is it because of the RTR stuff?
I think so. I just don't know what the clarity is in that situation at the moment. I don't know.
Now, is that purely a sentiment thing around the founder? Like, do you think sentiment's going to overwhelm like the image of the brand more than anything? Because
Yeah, maybe.
because right, nothing's changed for the Pandas project, right? Still had killer partnerships, still like Icebag still has all the connections clearly because he's flying out and hanging out with DJT, right? So all of that stuff is the same, price down because of the RTR, unrelated ish. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, isn't there a non-zero chance that, I mean, I have, to be clear, we discussed this on Friday. It's definitely not obvious what precisely happened. I know people have shared screenshots and Telegram screenshots, and people have alluded to what might have happened, but um I don't know if if it worked out in a particular way. I don't know if you can necessarily recover from that from a reputational perspective as an individual, even. If he's like rugged a bunch of people, which he might have done. I haven't got to the bottom of it yet. So I appreciate, the business is designed, but he runs the business. So it completely depends on what precisely the details were. Obviously, if he hasn't, then yeah, I would agree with you. I would just want that clarity before I start buying back into the project. So it's a good point on the project itself, though. Like the fundamentals of that was great when he was running it, had a great reputation, and people were actually really praising it for how well they managed to establish like a business revenue outside of the Web3 community, right? Like they're just doing other stuff with a proper use case. So that's my take on it. What are your thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, I think I'm a buyer. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not a big NFT flipper for the same reasons. Like, why would I do that and hope for 50%, 100% up over the course of the next 3 to 6 months when I could just buy a meme coin and pray a little bit and get 2 times the income or lose it all, kind of know more immediately, which is what this space is good for. So I don't get in the NFT trenches much anymore, but I have to feel like just from a observer on the outside that like, yeah, it feels like, and from what I could tell from the story, it seems like he got rugged and therefore it rugged everyone else like through him.
Mm,
Um, so I think it ultimately recovers. He comes back to the front and those bleed back up, but longer time horizon and not the assets I'm particularly interested in.
interesting. Okay, I was thinking as you were speaking, maybe from a risk reward perspective, if something has gone down so aggressively because that was the worst case scenario playing out, right? Like the people who got out were the people who thought this is the worst case scenario. I must get out.
Doomsday, right?
Yeah, that was the doomsday moment. That was the dip that was given to the market. And then I would guess moving forward, it's like, well, your downside's probably capped to where the price went at that point in time, probably, given that people would, well, this is the thing. I think if more information came to light and things were confirmed, there's probably a bunch of people giving him the benefit of the doubt in the way that you were. So maybe your downside's not capped. Actually, I've kind of talked myself out of talking myself
Good
into it.
talk. Good talk.
Yeah, just going around in circles here, Brad. Back to my same
No, I love
conclusion.
it. I love it. Real time.
That's why we talk, to get to the we talked around it, got to the right conclusion, or a conclusion in the end. I was going to ask you before we get into the main headlines, and I've got a couple of interesting discussion points for today, but what is kind of capturing your attention in the market? What are you looking at the moment? You shared this interesting graph, which I'll pull up on DePin. I wonder if you want to speak to that a little bit.
I actually don't have a ton to speak to it, but just like I have it's Monday morning, so I'm trying to get the assessment of the ecosystems, kind of see what's been going on. That was something that Artemis is a good dashboard for kind of just getting general performance of like, several grouped assets across the ecosystem. You can see DePin, and that's mostly leveraged by Helium within that group. There's 4 projects in there, and for anyone who's not watching the stream, so it's basically everything across the board. All of these sectors that are grouped by exchange tokens, bridges, Bitcoin ecosystem, DeFi, majors, like all this shit. everything is below zero, right? So negative returns over the last, because on a 1 month
Month.
period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except for DePin, and DePin is up 20%. So it's kind of a pretty stark standout. And then if you go down, you can actually like break it out and see which of the projects are performing well. So over the left, you can open it. And Helium within that is the one that's vastly outperforming basically everything. 1 day is 7%, 7 days 44%, 1 month is 103%, and then month to date change 23%. So you can see it's kind of what's lifting up that entire category itself. But yeah, just something like whenever we have these big pullbacks, you always want to see what bounces and what bounces with strength to kind of get an idea of like what maybe the broader market is telling you for
Mm.
just general trends, right? Every time everything goes down, a few things, strong memes, the majors, and then like a few standout projects, like usually the leaders in individual sectors. Tau is probably going to be one that does that kind of stuff, like from AI sector. Like they'll bounce. So I don't know, just interesting, anecdotal. Put it in the back of your head. Say, okay, if this happens again and again, because I've been wanting to get exposure to DePin. I think it's one of the true narratives that crypto has. So
Mm.
this is kind of telling me, and I have the Helium plan. Like it's useful. I think it enables participation from people outside of crypto, right? You don't have to contribute money necessarily to earn tokens,
Hmm.
and that's if you listen to the multi-coin capital guys, that's their kind of their theory on how each of these runs go, right? It's just a different distribution method. It was ICOs in 2017, proof of work. Back when Bitcoin came out, it was NFTs last cycle. Now they're thinking DePin is a strong narrative because it's a new way to distribute tokens. You had the DeFi Summer, which is all the food farming shit. So DePin, because you can just contribute, your location or various data points. You can walk around with something. You can fucking put an antenna on your car, all this shit, right? A camera. You can contribute video, extra processing power from your PC. You don't contribute money or capital. You contribute things, and that gives you token. It's a new way to distribute tokens to people. And then you take the token, go do DeFi, go trade meme coins, go do whatever. So it's just a sector broadly I want to keep an eye on more and more. And yeah, cool
I
that it's
like it.
bouncing here.
I like it. One comment and a question from me on this. So just a comment on the graph, just to give people some additional context. I'm sharing it for the people who are watching on X video and on YouTube, but for the people who aren't, and just well, even if you are, just calling a few things out. Gaming is down 20%, RWA is down 20%, Oracle is down 15%, Social is down 15-ish percent, Perpdex is down 14%, Bridget's down 14%, meme
And,
coins
and these
down
aren't all
9%.
inclusive, right? So
Sure.
like it's not all meme coins, it's not all
Yes.
bridges, but the project tries to integrate a good amount and then
Yeah.
like aggregates them. So just give you an
Some
idea.
type of attempt to aggregate this stuff. But as you say, might not be perfectly accurate in that, meme coins, they're being created all the time, over and over again. So a little bit of flexibility there. But as you say, very interesting to see Deepin aggressively outperforming. One thing that I wanted to ask you from a more like user perspective, actually, because this is something that has concerned me, and I assume maybe other people have some similar reservations. I want you to tell me if I'm being completely unreasonable or stupid or both. When it comes to this type of sharing data, obviously we have got quite accustomed to Web 2 people kind of taking our data, doing things with it, making a load of money off it, giving us something for free, then making money off the data in the background. There's been a couple of ones in the deep inside of things in crypto which have said like, oh, let's share your internet. What is it
Yeah,
like?
grass,
Yeah,
bandwidth, yep.
you share your bandwidth, contribute that to some kind of
CPU for decentralized
exactly. So whether
compute,
it's
yeah, all this shit, right?
CPU, bandwidth, these types of things. And the thing is, I'm not technical enough to understand the I don't know the the challenges of or the drawbacks or the potential negative things of what that might entail. Um, I'm naturally skeptical. Basically, is what I'm saying. I'm naturally skeptical. I feel slightly uncomfortable when it comes to sharing something as important as my bandwidth. So if I've ever, I don't, I think I actually stopped
You
short.
don't you don't want shit on your PC basically, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and if I ever would do that, I would be doing it off a separate computer, which is not my crypto, which doesn't have crypto assets on it. But like, just speak to that on your thinking. Maybe
So that's
how
fair.
do you think
Yeah.
about that from the security perspective?
Yeah, so that's totally fair. I think that would relate to 99.9% of people in this space. People just click a
Sure.
button and hope that they're doing what the thing says it's doing and not like ratting their entire PC and keylogging, right? Not good.
Mm.
So I would just say, yeah, if you are skeptical of those things, you can do that. There's a very wide range of DePin projects that you can get involved with if you want to understand the space versus just like, yeah, the get grass and the things that share like actual resources from your PC, right? And usually most of them come with a physical device. So like Helium, it's literally just mobile service, so you can download it on your phone, or Hive Mapper, you get a camera, you put it on your car, and you can drive around and take pictures, and that's supposed to take over the Google Maps model. There's some airplane radio signal share. You put a radio or put an antenna on your car or at your home and get whatever. So like those are separate physical devices, so you would feel probably much more comfortable with that. And usually it comes with an upfront cost, so you would pay like $100 to get the thing, hope to recoup your costs and tokens over time. So if you are skeptical of that, I would say honestly, it's not even worth your time. There's a lot of other things to focus on. Skip those, and then if you are interested in DePin, there are plenty of other things to get involved in to get familiar with. And then just DePin broadly, just as like a secondary note, it's all experimental right now. Like a lot of these people, a lot of these projects, even the people deep in the space are pretty skeptical of the actual tokenomic models around them. And it's kind of the thing where it's either going to be worth zero because it's high inflation, it doesn't get off the ground, or it's going to be worth a gajillion badillion dollars because it's taking over Google Maps, which is, like, worth infinite money, right? If you could actually do that, right? If you can supplant Google, which they derive a shit ton of revenue from giving out their Google Maps data to a bunch of apps and everyone else, and then it's just a monthly recurring thing. If they can overtake that with actual like an incentivized economy from people like providing them updated images, you can incentivize token incentive stuff, then yeah, like you're in good standing. But everyone's skeptical. It's just an experiment being played out. But it's good to have exposure. I think that's why I'm doing the Hive Mapper stuff, or not the Hive Mapper, the Helium stuff.
Like it a lot. I think it's very, very interesting to dive into that more. And it does seem to be the one that has a bit more of uh, a real use case that people can see practically playing out. One further question, Brad, which I think would be interesting for people that you mentioned, is this question of token distribution. And you said that this one, like every kind of cycle has a different way that tokens get distributed in a cool way. Maybe at one point it was ICOs, then at one point it was something else.
NFT mints, proof of work.
NFT,
Yeah,
NFT
yeah.
mints, proof of work, like staking. I don't know.
Food farming,
Yeah,
DeFi food farming. Yep, cool
airdrops.
too. Airdrops.
Um,
Yeah.
so these are different ways to getting tokens into people's hands. What have you heard is interesting, or what do you think is interesting about this model?
The model of DePin specifically,
Yes,
or just
yes.
like I said, it's using token incentives. Like you don't have to contribute capital typically, or like you don't always have to contribute capital. So I think that's what interests me. And it's like people like to be able to just participate, right? So like if I can, as an Uber driver, just say, well, fuck, I just get this camera, and all of a sudden, like I don't have to know crypto. I just do this thing, and I know that it's giving me $3, a day or whatever to do this thing. Or if I am a airplane aficionado and I just like I'm a hobbyist and I just want to be able to track airplane better, I can get the fucking antenna on my house and track things flying over. So like it's less super mega nerdy. Like I don't have to know DeFi. I don't have to like understand AMMs. I don't have to like deal with like hardcore crypto shit. It's very participatory, right? I can just tell my mom. I literally told my mom like, hey, just download Helium, right? Your phone internet sucks anyways. Get this, and you'll get tokens. And then like she may not know what those are for 6 months, but she'll get the dollars. It actually is a legitimate service that saves her money, like month over month from her actual plan because it's a viable service. It's good, and it kind of gets her familiar with DeFi. So it's just a way to get people to feel like they're participating and get rewarded. It's pure token incentives, which is what crypto is all about, right? It's all coordination incentives through tokenization, and it's a little bit obfuscated. So I think it's really close to home for a lot of these people. Where again, sharing your internet, setting up a fucking camera, or your fucking mobile phone, all that stuff is all familiar. That's familiar. They do the familiar thing, then they get tokens on the back end, and then that kind of pulls them into the ecosystem. That's why I think, and it's wide sweeping, right?
Mm.
Everyone has mobile phone, so like just download it on your app, run it. I had it running on my phone So I had my actual service provider, and then I had that on the back end that I didn't even hook up um, internet to on my primary phone, and I was getting tokens for it, right? Because I was
Mm.
mapping for them, I was providing a service, and that's I don't know, that's powerful.
That's pretty interesting. Amazing breakdown, Brad. Appreciate that. I think that'll be very helpful for the people listening in to try to get their heads around what's going on in DePin. And I shared the Matthew asked in the comments for the link to the dashboard which we were looking at. I shared that in the comments if anyone is interested to kind of be able to get that snapshot
The
across
name
the
is
different sectors.
Artemis Analytics. It's really good.
That's the one. In the comments if you need it. Okay, we're going to get into the headlines in just a little bit. I wanted to bring up one other interesting point that I noticed around conferences. Actually, obviously, we talk about the markets specifically, but we're also increasingly talking about how to make money around the rest of the space. We are a media company, and everyone, frankly, is a media company now. I think if you're participating on Twitter and online all the time, producing content, you are thinking about stuff from a media company's perspective. And this point was really powerful to me this morning. I'd never really framed it like this, so I thought it was interesting. This is from Leon, founder of Unfungible, who they kind of put on spaces for different corporate partners, and they said this when in comparison with conferences, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I just wondered what our thoughts on were. They said founders pay $15,000 to sponsor a conference and incur travel and accommodation costs for 3 team members. And this is us just after booking our own trip to Singapore. It's like, damn, have we made a mistake? Only to have 20 minutes of speaking time on a stage with 200 attendees. Yet they hesitate to speak in a room of 200 live listeners on X Spaces. Wake up, you're being out competed by founders who aren't fancy and are speaking on, well, he says 12 spaces a week. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but the principle is multiple spaces a week. What for you as a quarterly highlight, speaking live in front of 200 people, that founder might be doing once a day. And it just got me thinking, Brad, whether look, I think crypto attention is very expensive, and I think we do pretty well as a consequence of that. But I'm wondering whether the gap between sponsorships, uh, I wonder whether the perception of conferences versus spaces, whether spaces still have like a perception problem. I saw a bunch of um, content creators actually talking about how they're kind of going off spaces a little bit and just moving their attention elsewhere. They didn't find it bringing enough value to them, so they just weren't going to participate as much. Do you think spaces are as valuable as the conference kind of uh, slots that people might want to book in? Do you think they have a perception problem to some degree?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a perception problem, but it's that they serve two different purposes in my mind, right? If you go to a conference, you're going to make, I would say, a lot of high value connections potentially, right? Because it is an aggregation of founders. So yes, he's paying 15K to, or she's paying 15K to show up, talk. Like there's going to be 6 people in the crowd. None of them are going to be people that probably own the NFT, maybe one or two, and then
Mm,
whatever. But after that, outside of that, you're going to have conversations with VCs, other founders, because it's a very highly concentrated area of very prominent crypto personalities. So yeah, you're not, if your goal is to go to a conference to spend that money to have or build community, horrible allocation of resources. But if your goal is to go there and kind of strut and talk to other people of similar or higher caliber, I think that's a good use of resources. And that's always something that even last cycle I was always really fond of in spaces because it felt like uh, crypto broadly, and I think that actually is just one of the appeals of crypto is like the veneer of this hierarchy is kind of stripped away because of spaces. Everyone has access to each other, and that's both good and bad, right? Founders are fucking dunked on every single day because the person who has $3 invested in their project can DM
yeah.
them directly and dunk on them in Discord, and it's like that can be overwhelming for people at the top.
Mm,
But the connection that people at the bottom can establish to these people up at the top is really endearing, right? It's really appealing for me to be able to see that like these are normal humans that are just doing normal human shit, and I enjoy that. So
mm.
yeah, I would say broadly, community is built in spaces, absolutely, because that's where the community is. You got to meet them where they are. It's on the timeline. It's in spaces. And then if you're wanting to establish brand connection stuff within the industry, it's pretty invaluable to actually go to conferences. That's my takeaway. I meet people in real life at those places, and then even though I don't talk to them constantly or on the timeline interact all the time, we have a good like back end conversation that enables more powerful moves long term.
I completely agree. I've got some more thoughts on it as well, but Funky has his hand raised. Funky, welcome to the stage, my friend. Glad to have you with us today. What are your thoughts on the conversation where we're talking about spaces, Twitter spaces versus the IRL kind of component at conferences?
GM Modern Market Fam. Yeah, I would just say Brad had some excellent takes, and I feel is the IRL stuff, especially the big conferences that cross over to a lot of different things, like an ETH or a Token 2049 that's all encompassing, or those are probably worth the ROI, especially for the networking. But I push back on the whole notion of spaces losing their value, and in particular modern market, because you guys have continued to adapt, and because it's a daily show that's focused on the news, it's always going to be fresh. Whereas I feel some of these spaces that are somewhat thematic, maybe it is tiring to hear the same thing over and over again. But I feel like where a show like this is so informative and really just trying to keep the finger on the pulse of everything that's happening in the space, I think is a very high value thing. And to Brett's point, just the ability to get up and chat with the founder directly on a space, the access is just unparalleled.
Well, appreciate it, Funky. Your check is in the mail for those kind words. Second thing, my main reflection on this is there's something that one of the partners at my former law firm told me that kind of resonated, and I think it's applicable here. He said that when we used to have an office in the city, like the city of London, big law firm, not too far away from the business. We were in the insurance industry when I was doing that particular part of my it's called I did 6 months in the insurance industry basically as a lawyer. And this partner, we were about 15 minutes away from the insurance road. Like there's one road in London that's like full of all the insurance companies. And he'd always say like, when I was at the company, me trying to be like a helpful young person, I would say to him like, okay, when we do our catch up, do you want me to come to you? Like he's really senior, makes loads of money, really rich. I was like, shall I, where should we meet? Shall I come to you to be convenient? He was like, no, I'll always come to you. And it was the first time like a person in leadership had always said, no, don't make my life easier. I actually want to come to you. And the reason he explained why was because he said like every time I walk through the city, I'll like see someone who I know, like in the industry. And, you just get that touch point for like a second or a minute or two. But that's really, really important when it comes to just maintaining relationships. So like on the one hand, yes, everyone's trying to go out and create relationships. But at the same time, like the maintenance is actually just as an important thing. And he said, every time I come in, I get to meet a couple of people on the way. When I come into the building, I get to touch base with the specific people who are the, who are our clients. And I get to do that in person. And it was the first, and I feel like Spaces in some way is like that, where it's like, look, we're not going to wait until some special moment or some big event in order to try to connect with the people. We're going to, turn up routinely. And there's something about having it part of a routine and touching base with people that is very, very powerful. And I think just can't be neglected. Brad, I wonder what your thoughts are on my little anecdote there. Does that make any
No,
sense, or how you
no,
think
made
about
it.
it?
Like when I said it was endearing, that's what I was talking about, right? You feel a connection to people, and like you hear parasocial relationships a lot in this space where it does create some weird dynamics, but it's very real from the listener's perspective, right? And I guess that would be community's perspective too. And for those who don't know, parasocial is like it's a one-sided relationship where the hosts or the people that are up on these pedestals and on social media, whatever, they're out there tweeting, doing whatever, and people who are responding to them, typically their followers or listeners, feel a very strong connection to them because they see their inners, outs, whatever, all this shit. They see how they behave and they feel connected to them. But it's kind of hard for the person that is the on the receiving end of that, because I don't know every listener individually. I don't know every follower individually as strong as they know me. So it creates this kind of one-sided relationship. You get into like showing up at these conferences, and it's like, like I appreciate you, but I don't know you as well as you know me, and it creates a one-sided thing. Anyways, but just to say that the strength of the listener to the top, like that the presence of the parasocial relationship shows how strong it is, because it allows them to develop such a strong one-sided relationship. Yeah, so I think it's crucial.
I like it. I like it a lot. And ultimately, I think both of these things are part of the business, the deal making. I really do think, in hindsight, looking back at how I've kind of gone from 4 years ago not having a crypto or Twitter account, and just like growing the brand slowly on a personal level, and then doing the modern market stuff, like the absence of the IRL thing. I know that we're in a digital world and that you can do that. But I think looking for some kind of transactional value from the IRL meeting, like say we go to Singapore, right? And Brad, we literally just booked our stuff the other day, and we're like, damn, it's got expensive. Like it very quickly got very expensive. There's a lot of things going on at the moment. We left it quite late. But like looking for some type of return on investment the next month or the month after is just like not the way to do it, in my opinion. And it's always been something random. Like I meet someone somewhere. This happened pretty recently. Like, in fact, there's someone who I ended up brokering an art deal, or assisting with the art deal for, because I had lunch with them when I was in Miami last year in December. And like, there was no intention of like, oh, maybe we should chat because maybe we're going to end up doing these deals on art together. It was just like that person liked the content. I like them as a person too. And we just had lunch, and like 8 months later, something came of it in that interesting way. So it's like, I think that's the real benefit of it, because we built the trust even to be able to say like, look, this is a high value deal. How are we gonna broker the deal? Who's moving the art into which smart contract at which time? Was like, well, because there's a trust, we've met in person, you're able to do that stuff a little bit more. Any final reflections, Brad, before we hit the main headlines?
I was just laughing at my own relationship similar to that. I met someone at a Ren Tech meetup in East Denver 2 years ago, and we literally we ping each other every couple months of just like, hey man, how you doing? What's going on? And he's just like a highly connected trader in Hong Kong. It's just yeah, you learn a lot about someone in a short period of time. Like you can vibe them pretty easily.
Yeah.
And that allows for a lasting relationship in a lot of contexts.
Agree. Big agree. As much as spaces are really, really good, cannot do without the IRL stuff as well. Look, hope that was an interesting reflection from our perspective on the IRL component versus the spaces component. Let's get into the main headlines for today. As I said, a little bit quieter in the sense that price action might be a little bit more muted at the moment, but some pretty big things happening nevertheless, which I think just the pure information will be helpful for us to break down for you. The first one is Celsius suing Tether, seeking 3.5 billion over Bitcoin collateral sell-off. The information here is coming from Cointelegraph, sharing it on the screen for the people who are watching in. Defunct cryptocurrency exchange Celsius has filed a lawsuit against Tether, alleging misappropriation of assets and seeking approximately $3.5 billion worth in Bitcoin returns, damages, and legal fees. Tether reports that Celsius, in its lawsuit, seeks the return of approximately $2.4 billion worth of Bitcoin. However, publicly available court documents, okay, so they're asking for a bit more. This is what's actually going on with it, though. The lawsuit alleges that during Celsius's bankruptcy proceedings, Tether loaned it a specific amount of Tether, the company's stablecoin backed by the United States dollar. In return for this loan, Celsius sent Tether 39,542 Bitcoin in collateral. As the price of Bitcoin dropped, and per the two parties' agreement, Celsius was required to provide further collateral to avoid liquidation. According to the lawsuit, Celsius claims Tether liquidated the Bitcoin at a price point that almost exactly covered the debt without giving it the opportunity to provide additional capital. Tether has responded to say that this is baseless, it's a shakedown, and pledged to vigorously defend itself against unwarranted allegations in a recent blog post. Tether says that rather than liquidating Celsius' position in violation of their contract, it was Celsius that requested the sell-off after choosing not to provide additional collateral. Just as a real headline point here, Brad, before I come to you for your thoughts, this type of thing should be relatively easy to determine because as a former lawyer, like you just go into the documents and look at what people said and decide whether or not they were asked if they wanted to provide the additional capital. You just look at this is what you do when you come to this kind of thing. You look at the agreement, you say what each party must were obliged to do, were obligated to do via the terms of the agreement. Then you just go and look at the correspondence and you see, did people do what the agreement said? And
Who
so,
was the jerk? Is what, right? Someone
yeah,
was a jerk. Who was the jerk?
exactly. And the interesting thing is with these types of things, when I used to, this was actually pretty funny when I actually went to trial in one of my first cases, and when you listen to your own witnesses, you're just like, wow, the other side really are jerks, aren't they? They're terrible. They're terrible human beings. They're definitely the worst. And then it's only after you've prepared your own witness statements that you actually see the other people's witness statements, because obviously they're preparing it in private, right? They're the other law firms preparing it in private, and then they send them over and like, hang on a second, these
Oi,
you guys don't seem very
Kurt,
good
you're a dick.
after all.
Why are you doing this to their guy? He's nice. Something like that.
Exactly. And then you're like, okay, well maybe there is an argument to be had here. So that's like part of the process when you ultimately have to try to figure out what's going on with this type of stuff. But I don't know if you have any further thoughts on this, Brad. I thought it was just an important bit of information to come up. Tether obviously has, we reported the other day, making billions of dollars a year. Probably wouldn't even make a dent on them necessarily. What are your thoughts there?
They made $5 billion last quarter or whatever it was for first half of the year, I think it was. Yeah, I actually didn't pay attention to this story. I watched the USDT or like the transfer of wrapped Bitcoin. I read more into that stuff over the weekend. So no particular comments here. I'm more interested in the like Bitcoin and DeFi. I think I don't know how I feel about it.
Okay. Well, we're definitely getting into that one as well, because I thought that's pretty important too. Let's just hit the Web3 roundup to get everyone up to speed with
Tether's just gonna have perma FUD around it. Like it is the thing that if it collapses, our industry is going to zero for a while. It'll come back, but it'll go to zero for a while. If Tether gets the rug pulls us, we're fucked, frankly. But it's been fudded so hard for the last 6 to 8 years, and look at it, it's just fucking printing. And now it's at the point where like maybe it reached escape velocity, owning more U.S. debt than some sovereign nations. So like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. As you said, it's been incredibly resistant against all of the FUD. So we'll monitor it. We'll see how this things progresses. Let's hit the Web3 roundup before we hit the final headline, which Brad just alluded to, which is a very interesting one coming in just a couple of minutes. The Web3 roundup from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Number one, the MAGA coins move up in advance of the Trump Elon conversation later today. MAGA itself was up 18%. Dark MAGA, DMAGA up 10%. Will be interesting to just as a casual observer to see how that conversation goes. Elon's been on a bit of a tweeting spree in the last 48 hours, making all kinds of various commentary on free speech, etc. Next, Cosmos L1 Canto goes down for 24 hours due to consensus mechanism issue. Doesn't seem to be that much of an issue anymore. When a chain goes down, people just say that it goes down and then it comes back up and everyone just carries on.
They're gonna move. They're still working to become an L2. Yeah, that was their thing. I think Canto signed up with Polygon to the CDK to launch over there. But yeah, you're right. Like going down, stopping, which everyone, at least all the ETH heads, would say like that liveness is the technical term for it. Liveness was paramount. ETH optimizes for liveness, so it shouldn't go down. Solana optimizes for throughput and scalability, so it sacrifices some of that, which it hasn't in a while. Canto, I guess, maybe can say they're part of that too.
Makes a lot of sense. Solana Dex Jupiter denies dumping coins. I think there was some type of partner who gets a lot of the fees from Jupiter.
It was a soul scan thing. I actually saw something this morning. So what it is there's a wallet or an account program on Solana that was labeled Jupiter fees. Jupiter doesn't acquire fees, but they do have fees that go out for partner programs. So like, so other wallets, whatever, like that actually route through Jupiter get a portion of the fees that are charged. And in SolScan, it was labeled as Jupiter fees. Now it has been updated to Jupiter Partner Fee Program,
Got it.
whatever. So it was a misconception. That's what he's trying to defend against here.
Good stuff. Jupiter was not dumping a load of meme coins. MicroStrategy, Bitcoin Reserve Strategy, outperformed 499 out of 500 top stocks in the last 4 years, according to Saylor himself. Animoca Brands valued 75% lower than in 2022. This was reported a couple of days ago, according to something Yatsu, the CEO, co-founder of Animoca Brands, said. It's now valued at about 1.5 billion, which is nearly 75% lower than the valuation in 2022, where they raised 75 million at a valuation of 5.9 billion. So that is interesting to note. And finally, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Kampai Pandas on the NFT side were the biggest mover up after they bounced back about 15% after the Trump meme coin founder kind of issue with RTR. That's the Web3 roundup from the rest of the space. Brad, we said we have one more headline that we really want to get into, which I think is pretty interesting. I'll just set up a few kind of key details and then want to go straight to you for your thoughts on it. So this is about wrapped Bitcoin, where they've said, well, BitGo, who are kind of in charge of it, recently announced the move of its wrapped Bitcoin product to a multi-jurisdictional joint venture with Hong Kong-based BitGlobal, forming a strategic partnership between BitGo, Justin Sun, and the Tron ecosystem. BitGo CEO Mike Belch played down criticism of the move in an interview with The Block, emphasizing BitGo's commitment to security and highlighting the legal checks on BitGo and BitGlobal. So for people who are not familiar, because they're trading meme coins all the time on Solana or just ETH maxis, wrapped Bitcoin is a token on the Ethereum blockchain backed one-to-one with Bitcoin and used in a variety of decentralized finance applications. It will soon be under new ownership, longtime custodian BitGo recently announced. BitGo will become a minority owner in a new joint venture with Hong Kong-based BitGlobal. And so basically it will be like this multi-jurisdictional thing now. There's also this strategic partnership element between BitGo and Justin Sun, the founder of Tron. Those are some headlines, Brad. I think I've got a few more core details, but I'll just come to you here straight away. Why did you think this was so significant then? You thought you spent a bit more time reading into this one over the weekend. What are your thoughts here? Why did you think it was so significant?
So I mean, I can tell you why people were freaking out. One is because like there's a balance to be struck here. One, Justice Sun and Tron, everyone is like the ecosystem broadly is skeptical of it, but Tron has stepped in as the one of the leading stablecoin users in all of crypto right now, which I think a lot of people are agreeing is kind of one of our key use cases. So everyone is skeptical of them. Stuff is shaky. Not everyone is not liking the partnership there because again, they don't. It's similar to a lot of the Tether FUD, where it's like we don't trust the parties behind it. Like paperwork is not clean. There's a lot of sketchy shit, but like it's getting used, so like that's scary. My own personal like interest in it was just like how can everyone be so enamored with wrapped Bitcoin whenever it's like it's not a programmable chain. So I was questioning. It's because actually Austin Federa from Solana was saying not having a decentralized access to Bitcoin for DeFi was a failing of the ecosystem. They haven't had it in whatever. It's like I don't know how you could do that with a blockchain that's not programmable, right? You can't have a decentralized thing. You always are gonna have to have a trusted party. Now the trusted party is getting a little shakier with Justin Sun, His Excellency, right? Um, so and then that led me to another project, which is closer to a actual decentralized version of wrapped Bitcoin. I dug into it a little bit. It still has a 6 of 9 multi-sig. So there is some level of trusted party still there, and there's not a lot of liquidity, but it's a better option than what's being presented here. So there is hope on that front. But yeah, so like for me, it's just I don't know, it's just like the juxtaposition of like everyone wants Bitcoin to be a store of value, hold on to this thing, don't use this thing, but then like there's a lot of this clamoring for, well, make it the money of all of crypto, which you see some of that stuff with there's a Cosmos chain that's really like Epsilon or Babylon. that's really trying to bring it out throughout a lot of these ecosystems. I don't know. I think it's just like square peg round hole stuff. People don't want to touch their Bitcoin. There's not a lot of need for it, and this particular case is just because now it's more in the hands of Justin Sun, who is, if you've paid attention to any like top headlines the last, I don't know, 4 years, he always pops up in the darkest hours to say like, I have a shit ton of money, and he just constantly is winning trades, and it's just like another example of that. Everyone's not but not everyone believes that.
Mm,
He was
yeah.
going to buy all of Germany's Bitcoin. Remember, he stepped in for that. He's like, give me your price, and I'll buy it all.
Yeah, I remember there must be, I don't think anyone's done this yet, but there should be a great list of things which he has kind of put himself forward to buy, like at a terrible time. I'm sure
Yeah.
there would be a fantastic list of things.
Yeah, he did it with the back when in the Celsius days, didn't he? Or no, he bought an exchange. I forgot what it was. Polyonics. I don't know, an older one. But like the source of all this stuff has never tasted great, right? Like Tron's a fork of Ethereum. There's like, bro, you're just copy pasting this thing and trying to do whatever. He won. He's made infinite money on that, and then he's buying exchanges as they're going down, and then recouping them, and like yeah, he just keeps coming up on top.
Yeah, he does. That's it's interesting. So maybe the bigger point here, which I think you were moving towards, kind of a bigger point that you sometimes make about Solana versus ETH versus Bitcoin. Like, what is the roadmap for Bitcoin in the sense that it almost has an identity crisis with things like wrap Bitcoin? And I wonder whether or maybe I'll check this as if you don't know, like what proportion of Bitcoin ultimately gets kind of wrapped and backed in this particular way. What kind of demand is there for this type of product? I don't know if I don't have that number at the moment. I don't know if you do, but is there sufficient demand for people to want to their Bitcoin to do stuff in DeFi, or do people want to just sit and hold with it? Either way, I think this is still a significant product, probably got a significant value captured there. But what are your thoughts in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a subset of people that want it, right? That's basically what all of ordinals and all that stuff even are, right? It's people that were trying to be productive with their Bitcoin, because Bitcoin being proof of work is not an inherently productive asset, right? Just same way like proof of stake, I guess you could say, is inherently productive if you can just stake it and earn a little bit of yield, so therefore it becomes productive. Proof of work networks don't have that same connection, right? Miners are external to the system. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's always going to stay Bitcoin. It doesn't natively have any kind of yield or anything else. You can't stake it. You can't do any of that stuff. And like without a third party like providing a service. So, but there is a demand for it, right? Bitcoin's the most dominant asset in the ecosystem, right? It's the top market cap. People have gotten a taste of yield elsewhere, and they would like to take it back to quote unquote the mother chain. So there's obviously a taste for it. That's what OP-Cat, right? That's coming, trying to make it programmable, do a little extra stuff like this, like make this expand in this direction. I think ultimately, of course, it'll come. Whether or not like the bulk of people that wanted to do that have already shifted to other smart contract platforms or not, hard to say. I don't know have the numbers either, so I can't say like what proportion is actually even attempting to be wrapped Bitcoin elsewhere. But I have to imagine it's not a significant portion. But good luck.
Interesting. Yeah, I take those points. Interesting point from Overarch in the comments saying Bitcoin via wrapped Bitcoin is a non-freezable side of the asset and usable in DeFi. I think that is correct. And interestingly, people asked Wasabi to add wrapped Bitcoin. Wasabi, obviously, the protocol where you can kind of deposit various assets and earn some interest on it. And now you can do that, and they're offering 8% on wrapped Bitcoin. Not bad at all.
Yeah,
But
I like
Red is
just
not pleased.
in my mind, like if like the mind that you have to want to hold Bitcoin is not the same mind that is going to want to expose that risk to like if you want Bitcoin, you want it for the properties that it has, which the
Mm,
properties that it has, not being programmable, it's like the store of value, all this shit. Like they're not people who want that are not going to say, well, now I want to add programmability to this thing by risk it by taking it outside of its own native network elsewhere and earn, X percent. So like, and then if you are going to do that, like for 8%, you can like you can hold other stuff on other chains with less risk for similar yield because it's a native asset, because it's like it's there. So like I don't know. I think that, but this is someone who's just like not particularly like deep in Bitcoin world. So maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. But that's how I think about it. Like I don't understand why anyone who's a big hardcore Bitcoin dude would want wrapped Bitcoin elsewhere, because that is like that's an alt chain. That's that's
Sure.
against their strongest narrative.
Okay, I think that's fair, definitely for a lot of people. But there is clearly some type of niche, and maybe a reasonably significant niche, where people do want it. I just want to move the conversation forward a little bit as we throw to Funky to kind of consider what who bought this, because this tweet from Hasu suggested that the most interesting part of this buy is not that it's actually changing custody, because BitGo clearly wanted to exit, but the more interesting part is that Coinbase did not acquire it. What happened here? This is not only terrible for DeFi, it's even more terrible for Coinbase. I think the opinion here is Wrap Bitcoin was a great product. Obviously, it was in the wrong hands, so it made sense for them to sell it. Just don't understand why Coinbase didn't buy it. Seemed perfect for their portfolio. Funky, you are our resident Bitcoin expert. You're also a perma Coinbase bull. So maybe this is a good question for you. What are your thoughts on this take, and anything else you wanted to add to this part of the conversation?
Thanks, B. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't mind that Coinbase didn't buy it, even though I'm a mega bull, right? Because I think that you would just get the opposite side of the argument that this is just furthering centralization. Like Coinbase
Oh,
already has too much Bitcoin, has too much whatever. What I was going to say originally is that, I think people need to understand the level of what BitGo is in terms of this space. It is one of, if not the biggest institutional custodian there is. Um, they are very, very serious. Our company, Global Stake, is about to be onboarded to be, preferred staking service provider through BitGo.
hmm.
And the DDQ was 200 pages long. This is not a company who does anything lightly.
Hmm.
And I think people who are not playing that inside baseball and understand what BitGo represents to the industry, I think a lot of it is, to Brett's point, you guys were already talking about Justin Sun, the typical FUD. I mean, how much of this is maybe even sort of xenophobia, right? Like, I mean, we have this aversion in the West, everything that all relates to the East, especially when it comes to capital flows. We're very distrustful of China. Justin Sun is sort of the personification of that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad move to have a joint global kind of custody where you're having it just other capital markets, like I mentioned, Hong Kong being important. I think a lot of it is just much ado about nothing, personally.
Hmm.
But I also understand where people are coming from. And as someone who does like to be a DeFi dabbler, with to Brett's point about Bitcoin, we literally only use 1/4 of a Bitcoin that we keep in wrapped Bitcoin to do DeFi things and to play around, whether it's on Bob or what have you. So, and there are other better trustless options, like Interlay was first built on Polkadot, that doesn't require any kind of smart contracts or anything, and it's just collateralized vault. I think the bigger piece hasn't been discussed in the whole story about BitGo and Justin Sun with Wrap Bitcoin is MakerDAO basically saying that they're going to close off this as a lending avenue. I think that's the more interesting piece of the story. I know we don't have time to discuss it today, but just something to think about. And I haven't really had the chance to dig into that and the rationale behind it.
The
Yes.
rationale was just the Justin Sun stuff, right? They didn't trust it as a collateral anymore, given the ultimate backing of it, and that's why they signaled the move, or put forward the move for it.
Interesting stuff. As you said, maybe it would take a little bit more time to process the implications here, but hope that was an interesting just breakdown of what exactly was happening. To Funky's point, I think we are one of the shows that are routinely kind of pointing out, not without being able to guarantee the authenticity or veracity or genuineness of any protocol or program, but like this kind of trend where there are protocols or projects running out of the East and they're just being FUD. And like the more I investigate, I try to find out why. And I'm not able to actually find the specific reasons. So definitely conscious of that as well. Hope it was an interesting conversation to get you up to speed with everything that's been happening, but that is the time for our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. BST for 1 hour. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube, on audio, on video, and you can get us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts after the show as well. Thank you so much to my co-host, Brad. As always, have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.